Part 83. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 823. Lingnan suddenly calmed down. Unlike the uproar a few days ago when the government went to the countryside to seize rice seeds, the redistribution of seeds seemed very peaceful at this time. But everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. It was impossible for the Rongjun Palace to swallow this loss, and the court was also unwilling to suffer this loss. Farmers' crops were replaced, and the culprit, the legendary Qin Eryi, disappeared without a trace. Who will bear the consequences? If it was the previous dynasty or any court, the farmers whose rice seeds were replaced might have to swallow this bitter fruit by themselves, because the Fengshao grain shop that sold the rice seeds was right, and the Yamen was not responsible, and they couldn't catch second Lord Qin, can only suffer from this. But now the Fengshao grain shop and Yamen are redistributing seeds to them. Although more than half of the number 1 dry rice is directly missing, it is other rice or corn seeds, but they are also very content. But will Fengshao grain shop and Yamen have to bear the cost of the second seed? It is impossible for anyone to bear it in silence, so the tranquility at this time is very disturbing. Not only the middle and upper class, but also small merchants and hawkers on the street are paying attention to the news of Rongjun Wangfu and Yamen, for fear of missing any news. In this almost suffocating atmosphere, a few gentry with ghosts in their hearts are even more uncomfortable. They feel that they will lose at least 5 years of life after this incident. Is it too difficult? Wei Shishan regretted it even more. He shouldn't have agreed to this matter at the beginning. Now he can't get off the pirate ship. Once the Rongjun Palace finds out that they are colluding with outsiders and digging up the wall, the Rongjun King will definitely tear them to pieces. Thousands of paragraphs. Thinking of Qi Heiran's brutal reputation in Western Xia, Wei Shishan's legs were shaking while sitting on the chair. Qian Shishan looked down on Wei Shishan's appearance very much, and said, "The matter has been done, what's the use of Wei Shishan regretting it now? It's better to think about how to solve it." "You didn't say you would be discovered at the beginning," Wei Shishan said angrily. "When you persuaded us with the second Master Qin, you said that if the seeds are replaced, people will not be discovered. When the rice is harvested in autumn, they will also. I can only suspect that it is the problem of dry rice number 1 itself, but the seeds were discovered as soon as they germinated. Once this matter is known to the Rongjun Palace, will we still have a way out?" Tan Xiangshen looked at the two of them, and said after deliberation, "It's not that bad. After all, they couldn't find evidence, and now they haven't found us." Wei Shishan sneered, "How do you know they didn't find out? Maybe they are holding back now, evidence." "Humph, with the power of Rongjun Palace, do they need evidence to clean us up?" Everyone was flustered by what he said. Seeing that he was instigating people's hearts, Qian Shishan's face darkened immediately, and he sneered, "Whoever he is, the Queen of Heaven and the Queen of the Earth, is it possible that he dares to arrest us without evidence? If you I'm afraid, why did you get on our boat? Don't rush forward when you smell the fragrance, and you will be scared when you see danger." "You," Wei Shishan stared at him with an ugly face, "smell the fragrance? What fragrance is there at this time? The harvest grain shop and the Yamen have transferred a large number of grain seeds. Even if they planted 10 days late, the harvest will not be as good as Where Do We Go, except for the upland rice number 1 that we took the risk to plant in the ground. What else do we get? But which of us lacks a few caddies of rice? What we value is the ground, not the seeds." As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Qian Shishan with some resentment. Qian Shishan fell down in anger. He didn't force them to board the boat with a knife, but when something happened, they all relied on him. But in the hearts of Wei Shishan and others, Qian Shishan is the leader of this matter. If something goes wrong, who should we turn to? It was Qian Shishan who brought Qin Eryi to see them at the beginning, and agreed that they would help Qin Eryi hide the news and clear up the traces, and Qin Eryi would share 30% of the rice seeds he got with them. Of course, the 30% had to be bought with money. But are they looking at rice seeds? No, I can't buy enough rice this year, and I can keep enough for myself next year and the next year. They are looking at the land of those farmers who have lost their harvest. When the rice harvest is exhausted, they have to sell the land in autumn when the taxes are collected. This is a good time for them to buy land. There is no way, the Emperor of Daki and the King of Rongjun are too ruthless. The Emperor made a law that every household whose land property exceeds 200 mu cannot open up unclaimed wasteland, and can only buy it. However, when Zixia ravaged Lingnan back then, they lost a lot of land deeds when they fled, and those lands that were randomly closed due to the war and had not yet had time to sign a deed in the Yamen were all distributed by Chi Heiran to the exiled people and the lost land. Farmers. They didn't spend money in closing land, but they did spend money to buy officials. They had already earned a fortune, but they returned to the original starting point in a blink of an eye. How are they willing? But Daki is not like Dazhu. Land cannot be bought and sold casually. I wanted to take advantage of the establishment of the new dynasty and buy some land at a low price when the order was not stable. It is very strict, even if the seller is willing, if the conditions are not met, it will not be easy to pass the hurdle of the Yamen, even if it is useless to pay the officials. So Qian Shishan only clicked on the relationship with them, thinking that if those who were replaced by rice seeds during the autumn harvest could not pay the tax, they could only sell the land, and in order to receive the tax, the Yamen would definitely not stop them from signing the contract, so I agreed. Because Qian Shishan made a very clear analysis with them, they only targeted those farmers who couldn't recognize the seeds, and the rice seeds were all similar in size, and they were bought from grain shops, who would have thought that they were fake. Take 10,000 steps back and say that even if they are discovered, the Yamen will not find any evidence against them. They paid for the rice seeds, and it can be said that they bought them with merchants in Jiangnan. But when things came to an end, Wei Shishan and others were afraid. If traces were found in Rongjun Palace, would they really need evidence to question their crimes? Or it could be that the peace in Zhezhou these past few days made them even more flustered. Wei Shishan and Qian Shishan had a quarrel, and when they returned home angrily, they bumped into the housekeeper head-on. He was knocked back 2 steps, but the housekeeper pulled him back in fear. "Master, are you all right, master? Go away." Wei Shishan waved him away and said angrily, "Are you rushing to reincarnate?" The housekeeper wiped off his sweat, and said submissively, "Little one, is the little one chasing someone?" "Who are you chasing?" Wei Shishan asked casually. The butler's face was pale. He carefully looked at Wei Shishan's face and said, "Go after Zixing." Wei Shishan wanted to turn around and leave, but when he heard this, he paused, stared at the butler coldly, and asked, 11 Seeing escaped? No, no, Zixing's elder brother, Zile, took money to redeem him. The younger one happened to be away at the time, so they begged his wife, and the wife agreed in a moment of resignation. Now Zile has taken his younger brother away, and the younger one is on his way. Going to chase it out. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 824. Wei Shishan, who was already in a bad mood, was even worse. He walked towards the backyard angrily, and when he saw the housekeeper following him, he turned around and kicked him angrily, shouting, "Why are you still standing there? Why don't you send someone to chase after him?" The housekeeper scrambled and ran out, while Wei Shishan went to the backyard with an angry face. Mrs. Wei was sitting on the chair frowning. She stood up when she saw her husband coming in, just about to ask a question. Wei Shishan slapped him and said angrily, "Who told you to let me go on your own initiative?" Mrs. Wei fell on the chair covering her face, and looked at her husband in shock. He actually beat her in front of the servants. Mrs. Wei was heartbroken, tears streaming down her cheeks. Okay, she slowly sat up straight, and said, "Which part of this mansion is not under my control, the master draws the Tao early, and the concubine will naturally write it down after she dies. I won't care anymore. Wei Shishan sneered and said, what can and cannot be controlled in the mansion, don't you know by now? The servants in the room wished they could shrink back and pretend that they didn't exist, but they didn't dare to withdraw, for fear that the master would hit his wife again. Mrs. Wei sneered, knowing that Mr. Wei was just a naughty one. She was not afraid of him. She had a son and a family. Unless he didn't want to live a peaceful life, he would never dare to do anything again. Looking at his wife's cold gaze, even though Wei Shishan regretted hitting her just now, he couldn't help but feel relieved when he saw her gaze. He flicked his sleeves and snorted coldly, turned around and left. Mrs. Wei put down her hand covering her face, and her eldest girl, Mei Xiang, stepped forward to cover her face with a wet handkerchief. Madam, how can the master let go? What can't he get off? You go and ask someone to prepare the car, go to the school to pick up the young master, take the young lady with you, and we will go back to our mother's house. Mei Xiang was taken aback, and quickly persuaded, Ma'am, this will make too much trouble, and then the master will not look good, and the relationship between your husband and wife. Husband and wife relationship, Mrs. Wei sneered, do we have a husband and wife relationship? Why do you do this for a slave, ma'am? You shouldn't have promised 11 Le to redeem 11 Seeing just now. Mrs. Wei looked at Mei Xiang sharply, her face turned cold, and she asked, are you my slave or his slave? Mei Xiang hurriedly knelt on the ground, Madam, this servant is also for your own good, you and the master have never had such a big dispute before. So I should just watch Zixing being tricked to death by him. Mei Xiang's face turned pale. Mrs. Wei sneered and said, I didn't care about them before, because those people were young men. He bought them with money, so I couldn't say anything about them. But Zixing is just a child, and he is a good citizen. If he didn't threaten people to issue a bond of sale, since 11 Le can raise enough money to redeem her body, I have no reason not to let him go. Mei Xiang lowered her head, and Mrs. Wei looked at her coldly, not knowing what she was thinking. But the housekeeper who chased him out with his servants was shocked to see the Zile brothers sitting in the carriage marked with the palace mark. Zile even lifted the curtain of the car, turned to make a face at him, and shouted, Butler Wei, go back quickly, don't need to give it away anymore, the 2 acres of land I rented will not be planted, the rent has already been given to my wife, remember to clear the rent for the little one when you go back. Zixing poked his head out from under his brother, with a wide smile on his white face, he shouted, we are going to rent the land of the Wangfu, and we will be the tenants of the Wangfu from now on. The gentleman Wei who rushed over just heard the last sentence. He widened his eyes and saw the carriage going farther and farther. There was only one thought in his mind, it's over, the prince must know. Wei Shishan rolled his eyes and passed out with a plop. Butler Wei rushed back with his people and carried them back. When Wei Shishan woke up, it was already dark, and Mrs. Wei took her 2 children back to her mother's house. She didn't know about Wei Shishan's fainting. He felt that he had been miserably harmed by Jian Shishan in his life. Zile is just a small tenant, how could the palace redeem them and pay the rent? The palace must have found something that was following him, so they took 11 Le and 11 Seeing away, hoping to get some news from them. Wei Shishan's mind turned, trying to think about how much Zixing knew about his affairs. Because he really likes Zixing, even if the other party is still young and Wei Shishan can't touch him, he will serve him in the study, but he seems to be illiterate, and he has never entertained other people in the study. Wei Shishan breathed a sigh of relief, Zixing should know nothing. It was true that Zixing didn't know or read, but he knew where Wei Shishan hid his things. No matter what it was, he stuffed it in his bag and took it away. Brother said that the palace had redeemed them. Although he didn't say clearly, Zixing also knew that the palace would not redeem them for no reason. He had an intuition that the things in the secret compartment of the study were useful, so he stole them. Speaking of it, Wei Shishan should be unlucky, because Zixing is only an 8-year-old child, illiterate, and has never seen the world, so he doesn't take much precautions against him. Sometimes Zixing sleeps in the cubicle, and he dares to open the door. Grab something. Zixing had been told by his brother when he was robbed early, not to resist them openly, but to be careful, listen more, watch more and talk less, keep everything in mind, don't talk nonsense, let alone talk nonsense. Ask. Although Zixing is young, what his elder brother said is firmly in his heart. 3 days ago, his elder brother secretly told him that the palace would redeem his body for him, and told him to be more careful. He must not let Wei Shishan succeed, so he did it secretly. Prepare. As soon as his brother arrived today, he would sneak into the study and steal things out and put them in his luggage. Butler Wei was not there at the time, and Zixing was carrying a small bag, which looked like only 1 or 2 sets of clothes. Mrs. Wei knew they were in a hurry to leave, and she was also in case Mr. Wei came back suddenly, so naturally she wouldn't check it, that's all. Confused, Zixing stole such an important thing. Mu Yangling looked at the letter and account books on the table, and couldn't help laughing when he heard Zixing explain the process, and said, Wei Shijun is probably going crazy at this time. You have done a good job, don't go to the farm for the next few days, just live in the mansion, and when this matter is understood, I will send you to the farm. 11Le breathed a sigh of relief, and pulled 11 scene to kowtow to Mu Yangling. Seeing the two brothers leave hand in hand, the smile on Mu Yangling's face slowly fell. Li Shun stepped forward and poured her a cup of tea, and said in a low voice, that Zixing looks like he is only 7 or 8 years old, and that gentleman Wei what a beast. There is no shortage of good people in the world, but there are definitely not many such wicked people. Mu Yangling flipped through the account book, closed the booklet with a snap, and said, let someone check it out. In the past few years, they have come from Mr. Wei's mansion. How many young men were carried out? Mu Yang's face was as cold as water. Even if they are lowly, they can't be killed if they want to. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 825. This is a feudal dynasty, and it is naturally impossible to achieve equality for everyone. The prince who breaks the law and the people are guilty of the same crime only exists in scripts and dramas. It is not a crime for a prince to kill a commoner and for a commoner to kill a commoner, let alone a young man who bought into the mansion. That is a lowly status. A slave also needs 80 sticks. Although it is only 80 rods, what about 180, 1080? When the number reaches a certain level, the Yamen can humanely sentence him to be cruel and inhumane, and depending on the county magistrate's likes and dislikes, he can be sentenced to exile. Mu Yangling didn't expect that one day she would take advantage of the shortcomings of the rule of man to rule people. Gentleman Wei likes child molestation. This is not a secret among their class. Although he didn't publicize it in a big way, he didn't hide his hobby. It's not difficult for him to buy as many young men as he likes. After the investigation, when he saw the files accumulated on the file, not to mention Mu Yangling, even Lu Qing's expression changed. Lu Qing didn't expect such a thing to happen under his rule, and suddenly his hands trembled with anger. Mu Yangling's eyes were dim, and he asked, with so many lives, your government has done nothing. Lu Qing knelt on the ground, lowered her head and said, Mother, he is killing slaves. Ordinary people don't sue officials and don't investigate. The killing of slaves by the master is not even a criminal case, so how can he handle it? Mu Yangling sneered, I'm afraid he also ordered the officials in charge of the prison. She didn't believe that among so many children, none of their family members had ever approached her. Lu Qing knelt on the ground, not knowing how to explain. Mu Yangling closed the file and said, check. Since you can't find evidence of them stealing rice seeds outside, then look inside. Lu Qing responded, and retreated with the file in hand, turned around and someone captured Mr. Wei, sealing Wei's mansion. Qian Shishan was taken aback, and was busy asking people to inquire. When he learned that Wei Shishan was imprisoned for torturing and killing children, he couldn't help but frowned. Those boy molesters all signed death contracts, why is the Yamen still taking care of this matter? My lord, killing a slave is also a crime. Although it is a minor crime, if you are punished for several cases, it is not certain whether a person can survive the punishment. Qian Shishan was thoughtful, and said in a low voice, since we can't make it through, then we must take care of the orphans and widows of Brother Wei's family in the future. The butler was taken aback for a moment, and immediately understood that Qian Shishan wanted to annex the Wei family's property. Thinking that Wei Shishan and his master had always had a good time, the housekeeper couldn't help but feel chills, but he lowered his head and asked in a low voice, then do you want to go to the prison for some care? No, this matter is a bit strange. You can ask someone to find out if he was arrested because someone sued him. The housekeeper agreed, and when he came back at night, he would tell Qian Shishan that it was Wei Shishan's former tenant named 11Le who sued. He rented the land from the palace to cultivate, otherwise he wouldn't have the guts to sue Shishan Wei. Qian Shishan, who was drinking tea leisurely, suddenly changed his expression, his hands trembled, he put the teacup on the table, straightened his back and looked at the butler with piercing eyes, and asked, who did you just talk about? The little one is about Shishan Wei's former tenant. Who do you think redeemed his brother? Qian Shishan interrupted the butler with an ugly face and waved his hand. The housekeeper stared blankly at Qian Shishan, and said, it's the palace, Rongjun Palace. Qian Shishan slumped down on the chair, and said with a pale face, we were discovered, it must be Wei Shishan who accidentally showed his whereabouts, idiots, a bunch of idiots. The butler didn't know what happened, but it was the first time in his life that the master looked so ugly, so he stood tremblingly, not knowing what to do. Qian Shishan pointed at him and said, go and invite Tan Squire and the others to come over. No, we can't let them come to the house to prepare the carriage. I want to go out. At this time, Wei Shishan was standing at the bottom of the hall with his neck straightened, looking at Lu Qing in the hall without fear. He was a supervisor, and he didn't have to kneel when he saw an official. Lu Qing didn't force him, just quietly flipped through the files, and then handed the most recent one to the master, saying, since Wei Shishan can read, please ask him to read it to see if there are any mistakes. Wei Shishan opened it, and his expression changed immediately. This is his dossier of child molestation. It's not that Wei Shishan has never been sued, so 2 or 3 files have been made, but he settles it with money every time. It was easy to pass, so the county magistrate was happy to see him bribe himself to eliminate the sentence directly. However, this dossier is not among those 2 or 3 volumes, that is to say, someone secretly set up another dossier for him. Seeing the date on it, Wei Shishan rolled his eyes, cupped his hands and said, my lord, this is the dossier of the previous court, it can't be true. You are also the supervisor who bought it in the previous dynasty, can this not be true? Gentleman Wei choked, and Lu Qing smiled lightly, and now the property of the Wei family's land and property was also placed in the previous dynasty, so it can't be true. This is not true. I mean, this file may be fake. After all, the servant on the file died a few years ago, and people are born, old, sick, and dying. This is just a 9-year-old child. It is very common to get sick and die young. Crack, Lu Qing slapped the gavel angrily, and shouted, you also know that he is only a 9-year-old boy, so how can you do it? It's easy to be fooled if you really think you are an official. Your little hobby, Quanja's who in the government doesn't know? Or should Wu Zhou open the coffin for an autopsy and start from scratch? Lu Qing threw the dossier in his hand to his face, and said with a sneer, You didn't expect someone to set up a dossier for you in the Yamen, did you? I'll let you fill out the dossier. Wei Shishan thought that he had been stared at all these years, and couldn't help but shudder. Lu Qing snorted coldly, and ordered Wei Shishan to be taken to prison to be locked up, and he was specially ordered to be locked up next to the death row inmate. My lord, what should I do with Governor's son who is doing the file in private? Obviously knowing that there is such a cruel person and not stopping it, but secretly doing files to blackmail people. Even if he has made a contribution this time, I can't afford to use such a person. Get rid of his reputation and beat him 50 times expelled from the Jezhu government. The master agreed and bowed to retreat. He also looked down on Governor's son very much. Lu Qing turned his head and said to Budu, "Get ready, we'll meet with Mr. Wei in the middle of the night, and we must pry out the matter of stealing rice seeds from him. This is their main purpose. If those gentry and landlords who eat inside and outside are not pulled out, they will be a big nail in Lingnan, which is close to Xixia, and they may be pierced at any time." A policeman quickly came in from the outside and reported in a low voice, "My lord, Qian Shishan has gone out of the city. I heard that he is going to Keifu Temple to worship." Lu Qing sneered, and said, "Let people keep an eye on him. He sent someone to notify everyone when we met 3 times. Even if he is not the leader, he is still a very important person." Then the other people. The policeman said, "There are not enough manpower in the humble job, so we can only keep an eye on 3 people. It's enough to focus on Qian Shishan. The other people choose to. If there is a danger of being discovered, they will withdraw. There is no need to force them." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 826. In the middle of the night, Lu Qing came quietly to the death row with the head catcher. Seeing Wei Shishan cowering in a corner in fright, he looked at the death row prisoners on both sides. Lu Qing raised his chin slightly and said, "Take him to the execution room." The head arrestor dragged Wei Shishan, who was screaming, to the torture room. Wei Shishan looked at the various instruments of torture in the torture room, his face turned pale with fright. He looked up at Lu Qing tremblingly, and stammered, You can't torture me, I did not deny." Meaning he will plead guilty. Lu Qing sneered, picked up the pliers in the stove and poked the charcoal inside, said, "Do you think that the reason why this government took so much trouble to arrest you is to try your murder case?" Wei Shishan's face was ashen, and he knew that the Rong Jun Palace must have discovered something, so he used an excuse to arrest him, and it was not because of joy that he sued him. Lu Qing stood in front of him, looked at him condescendingly, and said, "We all know what you and Shishan Qian are planning, and finding you is just to give you a chance to make meritorious deeds." Wei Shishan kept his mouth shut. Although he was as timid as a mouse, he also knew what crimes he could and couldn't confess. If he admits to killing slaves, he will be exiled for hundreds of miles at most. If the family is willing to spend money to move around, his life will not be too bad, and he will be back in a few years. But if you admit to stealing and exchanging farmers' seeds, this is a serious crime of beheading. Persuading farmers to teach farming and mulberry has always been a major matter for the court. They changed the rice seeds of so many people at once, and killing them 10 times would not be enough. Wei Shishan gritted his teeth and remained silent. Lu Qing said indifferently, "This government doesn't like to sentence people to exile. I prefer stick punishment. It's simple and neat, and it can be settled on the spot. If you kill slaves, 1 person will die with 80 sticks. There are 9 people in the record. The penalty is 720 sticks. To save time, let's finish it all at once, what do you think?" Wei Shishan looked at Lu Qing in shock. Isn't this going to beat him into a puddle of flesh? If you can't buy off the Yamen servants, the young and strong guys will die with 80 sticks. If you bribe the Yamen servants, the 80 sticks may hurt your skin, but with Lu Qing personally watching, which Yamen servant dares to favoritism? With his body and bones, he might die in less than 100 sticks, let alone 720 sticks. When Wei Shishan thought that he would be beaten to death, his body shivered and his lower body became hot. He lost control of himself. Lu Qing snorted coldly, flung his sleeves and left, and the head catcher was about to take him back to the cell. Seeing his ashen face, he seemed unable to bear it and said, "Master Wei, why bother to carry it? Our master has confirmed that you are colluding with outsiders stealing rice seeds. Whether you admit it or not, the concubine will put it on your head. If you don't plead guilty, the concubine will find you other crimes. Whoever is clean clean. You can be regarded as clean and self-sacrificing among several lords, but you see, it is still in the hands of the magistrate." Wei Shishan was silent, and the arrestor knew that he still had doubts in his heart, so he lowered his voice and said, "If you tell the truth, the princess might spare your life for the sake of your meritorious deeds. It is because you have the evidence of killing slaves, among other things. Can you get out alive after being punished for several crimes?" Wei Shishan trembled, but closed his eyes slightly and remained silent. The head catcher sighed, and said, "Forget it, you are loyal, even small things can't force you to be ungrateful, but you are benevolent, but I don't know that Master Qian doesn't have your loyalty." When the head catcher said this, he felt regretful. With a sigh, he dragged Wei Shishan to send him back to death row. Wei Shishan grabbed him and asked, "What happened to Master Qian?" The head catcher was stunned and hesitated. "Well, we can't communicate with the prisoner. If the people above know about this." Wei Shishan tremblingly took off the ring around his waist and stuffed it in his hand, saying, "This thing is not very expensive, you just hold it, and I will ask Steward Wei to send me some more silver later." The head catcher touched the pendant and confirmed that it was a good thing. Then he opened the door of the torture room and looked out, and after confirming that there was no one there, he whispered in his ear, "Don't spread the word about this. In fact, it happened several days ago in the palace. My lord and I suspect you. You thought you were doing something confidential, but unexpectedly there were traces everywhere. The princess held back because the seeds of the farmers had not yet been implemented, so it was not easy to cause extra problems. Now that the chaos has calmed down, the seeds are all gone. It was sent again, and only then did it fight back." Sure enough, Wei Shishan said that his feeling was right, and the princess had doubted them a long time ago. The head catcher said again, "I don't know much about other things, but I led my brothers to monitor you and Qian Shishan, and then you were arrested." Qian Shishan asked Tan Xiangshen and the others to meet, and came to let you. Mrs. Wei came out with the money to manage the yamen to save you. The head catcher looked at him sympathetically and said, "Mrs. Wei misses Mr. Wei, so she handed over the money without saying a word. It not only takes away from our relationship, but also makes Mr. Qian. I took the money to go to other relationships, just to ask for your safety. Isn't that normal? Why do you look at him with that? You are pitiful, your whole family is pitiful look?" Wei Shishan was only confused for a moment, then turned pale in shock, and asked, "My wife gave the money to Qian Shishan." The head catcher looked at him pitifully, nodded, and said, "I don't know what the money gentry is doing with the money, but Mrs. Wei sent the money to the government office. The adults accepted it all, but sealed it up, saying in the end, it will be confiscated, that is, the little money in our hands, and the adults will also be searched." Wei Shishan fell to the ground, grabbed the catcher's pants and said, "I want to see the bitch. As long as you let me see her, I will give you a lot of money." "Master Wei, why don't you understand?" The head catcher tore off his hand, and said in a low voice, "My lord will put you in death row, just to prevent outsiders from seeing you, not to mention, even if you see Mrs. Wei, so what, ask her not to take care of you anymore. Even if she is willing, but Master Wei is only 11 years old, can he bear the family property? It's not like you don't know what kind of person Master Qian is. Besides, let's go and inform Mrs. Wei." The people came back and said, Although Mrs. Wei scolded you badly, she begged her family to fish you out no matter what. Wei Shishan is not moved at all now, he just feels that he has fallen into a dead end, and no matter how he goes, it will be a dead end. Why would he rather die than confess? It's not for the gentry and the others to save money, let alone for the so-called benevolence and righteousness, but to keep the family business and his son. If he admits to stealing and exchanging rice seeds, most of his assets will be confiscated, and he will still be dead. I thought he would be beaten to death if he didn't admit it, but at least the Wei family's family business was preserved, but now it seems well, Qian Shishan and Lu Qing obviously wanted to plot against his family fortune, perhaps it would be better to confiscate his assets. No one knew better than him who Qian Shishan was and how much he loved land enclosure. If his wife and children fell into his hands, he might not even be able to keep the sacrifice land. Wei Shishan hugged his head remorsefully. Why did he agree to Qian Shishan to go to this muddy water? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 827. Wei Shishan grabbed the head catcher, hesitated but asked expectantly, "You think I can take the blame and make meritorious service?" This. Wei Shishan immediately said, "I will give you money." The head catcher said in a low voice, "Even if there is no Master Wei, there are other people. If so, why don't Master Wei take the first step? It may be difficult to save his life, but it should not be a problem to change his family to Xiaopangan. As for the family business, is it possible that the princess will still stare at your family's property? At that time, if you ask, it will only be a matter of nodding." Wei Shishan quickly figured out what was going on, and he resisted stubbornly. The princess and the Yamen have already determined that they did it, and they can find other crimes to punish them without evidence, such as him now. He died before Qian Shishan and others. Lu Qing would definitely deal with his Wei family without evidence, and with Qian Shishan and others staring at him, his 11-year-old son would definitely not be able to keep the family business. He confessed, made meritorious deeds, and begged the princess to let his wife and children go, and protect his family property. As long as the princess nodded, Lu Qing would not take action against him again, and Qian Shishan and others were pulled down by him, and no one tried to plot against him. That's homework. Seeing that Wei Shishan's face changed, but his eyes became more and more determined, the head catcher could not help but twitch his mouth, and helped him back to the death row. Wei Shishan asked him to tell Lu Qing that he wanted to see Lu Qing. The head catcher took the money promised by Wei Shishan again, promised in a low voice that he would deliver the person tomorrow, and locked him in the cell. The head catcher looked at the door before turning and leaving. Several arrestas were sitting on the ground, looking inside from time to time. Seeing the head arrester approaching, they hurriedly got up. "Brother, how is it, has he recruited?" The head catcher glared at him, and said, "Keep this place well, no one is allowed to enter, and see how decent you are sitting and leaning on." After scolding a few people, the head catcher asked, "Where is your lord?" "It's outside." The catcher hurried out. Lu Qing was standing under the wall, saw him coming out, and asked, "How is it?" "He asked to see your lord. In order to avoid his suspicion, I promised to notify you after dawn." "My lord, will this world be rushed? It's not long before dawn." "Some words cannot withstand scrutiny, so we can't give him too long time. Let the prisoners in the cell surprise him, and don't let him have too much time to think." Poor Mr. Wei was also frightened all night after he went back. He almost closed his eyes, and breakfast was served in the cell. Under such circumstances, Wei Shishan was taken to the court, and after Lu Qing sent everyone away, Wei Shishan asked tremblingly, "My lord, if I provide evidence, can the princess take the blame and make meritorious deeds?" Lu Qing snorted coldly, and said, "This government will help you with good words, but I can't guarantee whether the princess will let you go." Lu Qing said that Wei Shishan calmed down instead. He thought for a while and said, "My lord, this matter should start from the first month." At that time, Qian Shishan brought a person to us, and that person was called Qin Yi. Wei Shishan explained their purpose and calculations again. Lu Qing frowned and asked, "Do you have any evidence and account books of your dealings?" Second Master Qin used his identity as a merchant in Jiangnan at that time. "We have an account book for trading seeds, and we don't have anything else." Lu Qing's face was ugly. "These account books can't be used as evidence for conviction at all. This can only show that their seed sources are normal. Even if the testimony of Li Er and others is used to prove that Qin Yi is the person who stole the seeds, it can only be proved. It can show that the seeds traded to them by Qin Yi were stolen, and they can easily evade that they don't know." Lu Qing looked down at Wei Shishan, wondering how likely they were to win with this witness. "It is unavoidable for people to quibble, and there should be more physical evidence. Is there no evidence to prove that you have bad intentions?" Wei Shishan blushed, thought for a while, and gritted his teeth. "It is inevitable that there is a list there, which is the list of farmers whose seeds have been replaced. At that time, we drew up the range. When harvesting in autumn, each of us can only buy land in our own domain. Do not compete with each other by raising prices." Lu Qing's eyes lit up. "This is important physical evidence. Where is the thing?" "My share is on the beam in the study." Lu Qing hurriedly went to get it, compared the list with their statistics, and found that 90% of them were the same. She was overjoyed, and took the list to find Mu Yangling, wanting to arrest Qian Shishan and others immediately. It's just that Lu Qing didn't see Mu Yangling, and met Fan Zijin first. Fan Zijin took the list and pondered, "If we control Qian Shishan and others instead, do you think we can lure out that second Lord Qin?" Lu Qing just felt that it was inappropriate, and thought about it. Second Master Qin may not appear again, but Qian Shishan and others know that Second Master Qin has abnormalities and still eat inside and outside, so it may not be good for Lingnan if such a person stays. Fan Zijin frowned. He still wanted to give the order, and there was a neighing sound from outside the gate. When he looked up, he saw Qi Heiran striding in with his whip in his hands. Fan Zijin frowned, and asked with a smile, Border, everything is arranged." Qi Heiran nodded, frowned, and asked, "Why are you standing here?" The three of them went to the flower hall together, and Fan Zijin took the opportunity to briefly talk about the affairs of Zhu on the way. Qi Heiran took the evidence and asked, "So with this we can convict them?" "As long as Wei Shishan is willing to testify, plus the testimony of Li Er and others." "Then why are you still standing there? Go arrest people." Lu Qing looked at Fan Zijin, Qi Heiran followed his gaze, and Fan Zijin said, "I want to use him to lure Second Master Qin, but if it doesn't work, I can join them instead." "It's too long, we can't afford to wait," Qi Heiran snorted coldly. "Besides, there's no need to keep people who eat inside and out like this. We have plenty of ways to deal with that Second Master Qin." Qi Heiran had an urgent matter to talk to Fan Zijin, and he was not in the mood to talk about it anymore, so he stuffed the evidence back into Lu Qing's arms and said, "Go and arrest people, I will leave this matter to you." Then he impatiently dragged Fan Zijin to the study room, and as soon as he entered, Qi Heiran lowered his voice and said, "I've snatched something good." Fan Zijin was a little dazed. "What good thing?" Qi Heiran took out a big gold nugget from his pocket and gave it to him. Fan Zijin looked at him disapprovingly. "It's worth it for you just to snatch such a gold nugget." Fan Zijin paused, and said sharply, "How much did you snatch? How much gold can make him show off to him so wickedly?" Qi Heiran smiled openly, gestured with his hands, and said, "A big gold mine." Fan Zijin didn't feel happy, but felt that his feet were a little weak, so he forced himself to ask, "Who owns this gold mine?" "Of course I snatch it, it belongs to me." Qi Heiran had no choice but to say under Fan Zijin's gaze, "It belongs to Zixia." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 828. Fanzijin really wanted to pass out, but he was in such good health recently that he couldn't faint, so he could only sit on a chair and stare at Chi-Heiran, trying to make him change his mind. Chi-Heiran touched his nose and said, "This is also an accident." Fanzijin sneered and didn't believe him. "Go and tell big cousin and Aling, don't tell me the gold mine went to Zixia. Did they think their life was too peaceful? Although they defeated Zixia before, Zixia's life was much better than theirs. Now that Daki has just stabilized and is on the road to vigorous development, he doesn't want to start another war at this time. Tell me what's going on." Mu Yangling led Xiao Xiang through the door and came in. Hearing that Chi-Heiran was back, she came to have a look, but Xiao Xiang insisted on following. The little bear let go of his mother's hand, rushed towards his father, stopped temporarily when he reached his father, put his hand in front of his nose and fanned vigorously, and said disgustedly, it stinks, and Daddy doesn't take a bath." Chi-Heiran pushed Xiao Xiang aside, and said to Mu Yangling, "I was about to tell you, something happened when I went to the border gate this time. I went to Zixia and robbed a gold mine." The little bear has already seen a large piece of golden gold on the table. He ran forward to hold it in his arms, looked up at his father. "Daddy, is this a gift from you?" Chi-Heiran twitched his mouth, pushed his son aside, and said to Mu Yangling, "This is the gold refined from the gold mine." Mu Yangling took out the gold from Xiaoxiang's arms to have a look, and said, "The purity is quite high. You have only been to the border for a few days? Not only have you robbed the gold mine, but you have also smelted gold. This is already in the gold mine. How can he have time to refine gold? What's more, he is surrounded by soldiers. How can there be craftsmen in this field?" Seeing that the gold was taken away by his mother, Little Bear jumped up and wanted to take it. Mu Yangling simply stuffed it into his arms, pointed to the soft couch in the study and said, "Go there and sit and play." Mu Yangling asked Li Shun, who was guarding the door, to go to the kitchen to get some soup and food for Chi-Heiran, then sat beside him, and asked, "Tell me, didn't you go to the border to patrol? Why did you run to someone else? Have you gone to grab gold mines in your family's territory?" In fact, it was really an accident that Chi-Heiran snatched this gold mine. Zixia soldiers have been harassing the border more seriously recently, and because the Qin family who had fled to Zixia was pulled out by stealing rice seeds in Zhezhou, Chi-Heiran became more careful, so he took the army to the border to strengthen the defense and patrol the defense line. Zixia soldiers didn't do much to harass the side. Every time, 300 or 400 people rushed over to loot and then retreated, or fought with the guard soldiers on Daki's side. Maybe the other party didn't want to take the war expansion, so they didn't hurt people's lives. During this period of time, there were a lot of looting around the border, but most of the people were injured, and there was no death toll. Even the eldest daughter and daughter-in-law who were always robbed by Zixia soldiers, as long as you hide, nothing will happen. As for the soldiers, only 5 people were killed in the 12 guards along the line, and 4 Zixia soldiers were also killed on their side. Everyone lost and lost. This kind of tactics is not uncommon for everyone. When they were in the Northland, the Golden Soldiers often harassed them like this. Sometimes it was not for looting, but for training recruits. In the past, Chi-Heiran often took the recruits to the camp of the Jin soldiers to practice their skills and courage. But Zixia's attack on Daki's border every day is not for looting, let alone for military training, and because the matter of Zhezhou is still there, Chi-Heiran is worried about his wife and children, so he doesn't want to waste too much time at the border. The soldiers at the bottom warned Zixia, seeing that they were not stopping, their hearts were on fire, and when they went out, they ran into a group of Zixia soldiers who were eager to die. Chi-Heiran wanted to kill them all. Fortunately, he still had his senses. He knew that if he really killed them all, This petty war would expand, so he led people to drive them out of the Daki border after being seriously injured. Unexpectedly, this group of people then brought 400 or 500 people to try to get back the place. Liu Dehe suppressed Qi Heiran, and preemptively accused them of crossing the border. Their general was able to save their lives because of the diplomatic relations between the two countries. Cross the border. The other party is not a vegetarian either, so they scolded Liu Dehe before the battle, and the two scolded each other for a whole day. When Liu Dehe was drinking water, he took the opportunity to tell Qi Heiran, they will definitely not expand the war. Well, if they scold for a long time tomorrow, their anger will almost subside, so we will leave. Qi Heiran stared at a few people in the opposing team and sneered, those are Han Chinese, go ask, who are they? Liu Dehe was taken aback, and turned his head to look, and sure enough, he saw a few Han Chinese mixed in the opponent's army, and couldn't help frowning. No matter what time it is, traitors are always disgusting. But they are enemies now, so they can't run over and ask who the other party is, right? Liu Dehe was thinking of words, but Qi Heiran impatiently rode forward, pointed at the people in the middle with his whip and asked, those Han people are the traitors of Qin. The few people in the middle raised their heads, and one of them squinted his eyes and looked at Qi Heiran for a while, then suddenly shouted, he is the king of Rongjun in Daki, if you kill him, you have made a great contribution, and the emperor will reward you with a reward ho. Qi Heiran squinted his eyes to look at him, and suddenly realized, Master, why does he look familiar to you? It turns out that you are Qin Fang's son. I was looking for you everywhere, but you bumped into him yourself. Leave him behind and you can leave. When Qin Iryi called out Qi Heiran's identity, there was a commotion in Xixia's army, and then everyone looked at Qi Heiran with green eyes, ready to move. Liu Dehe was on guard. Xixia was a martial artist, worshipped warriors, and was not afraid of death, but when he heard that killing Qi Heiran would make a great contribution, he all moved his mind. They were originally born for military exploits. Qi Heiran can naturally sense their changes, but he is not afraid. They are only 400 or 500 people, not to mention the soldiers in the original guard. There are only 2,000 soldiers he brought over. How could he still afraid of these 400 or 500 people? He wanted to keep that second Lord Qin. He made people panic in his Juzhu mansion, and he always wanted to give an explanation to the people. Therefore, Qi Heiran insisted on looking at the other party's generals and asked them to hand him over. Both sides wanted to fight. No matter how Liu Dehe tried to stop them, the anger would only get louder and louder, and then they didn't know who would strike first, but the fight started anyway. Qi Heiran's target was those people from the Qin family, and he rushed over as soon as the fight started, while the opponent's target was Qi Heiran, and the battlefield centered on him in an instant, and when Qi Heiran commanded everyone to break out of the encirclement, most of the enemy troops when they were annihilated, Second Master Qin had already taken their guards and ran a long way away. Qi Heiran chased after him with his own army without even thinking about it. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 829. Qin Iryi is more important to Qi Heiran than an army of Xixia, because this guy knows Qin Fang's secret lines and operations in Daki, as well as the treasury money hidden by Qin Fang. They have never given up looking for it. Qi Heiran chased into the territory of Xixia with 1,000 soldiers, which made Liu Dehe very anxious, but before he left, Qi Heiran gave him an order to guard the border and leave him alone. His 1,000 soldiers are all cavalry. Even if he goes deep into the territory of Xixia, he is confident to come out again. Qi Heiran's self-confidence was a bit arrogant, but Liu Dehe was heartbroken by it, and could only give him a worried look. Qin Iryi withdrew from the Juzhu mansion. He was supposed to rest in the guard for a while, and he was going back to the capital of Xixia tomorrow, but a small team from Xixia was picked. I heard that a Han general on the other side was very brave, and his command was Ruosu, and then listening to the other party's description, Qin Iryi felt very similar to the Chi Heiran he had seen before. His life in Zixia was not easy. Yuan who was chasing and killing them. In order to get Zixia's protection, most of the money they brought was spent. Now Zixia is divided into two forces, and one force wants to establish diplomatic relations with Daki, to rebuild the market, to carry out mutual market transactions. There is no way, they can't beat Daki now, they have to find something for everyone to do, otherwise, who knows when the Zixia royal family will be overthrown. But another force thinks that the Han people are weak, and the Qi Ziyuan brothers have only run Daki for 3 years, so they must not have much accumulation. For the master, there is no need to worry about the problem of food and grass, just grab a few more cities, and their slaves will have gold and silver. It's fine if the second force has the upper hand, the Qin family can lead the way and everything, but now the first force is stronger. In order to get in touch with Daki smoothly, someone actually proposed to kill their Qin family, give it to Qi Ziyuan as a gift. With the knives on their necks, they could only try their best to show their importance, otherwise he would not have taken the risk to come to Daki in person. Qin Iryi wondered if his father would jump out of the coffin angrily after knowing these things, because when their father gave them those things, it was to revive the prestige of the Qin family, but they used them to save their lives. But now, I'm afraid I can't even save my life. Qin Iryi patted the sitting horse desperately, trying to make it run faster and faster, but the 1,000 cavalry behind them gradually approached them. Qi Heiran chased after him, and he still had the heart to laugh at second master Qin in his heart. Fortunately his father is Qin Fang, otherwise who could afford such a stupid son? To actually lead them to run into a remote mountain, isn't this courting death? Qin Iryi's guards also felt that their master was stupid. They shouted hoarsely, and asked him to go east, where there was Zixia's guard, and let Qi Heiran and others there. Even if they couldn't stop the other party, they could still, it can buy them a lot of time. Not to mention, Qi Heiran ventured deep into the territory of Zixia. They go to a few more Zixia guards, delaying them can drag them to death. But their master headed west all the way, then turned to run northwest after a while, and then gradually turned east. The direction kept changing, the speed of the horse didn't drop at all, but he managed to avoid all the Zixia guards, which made several the guards became more and more desperate. They really wanted to use their horses to force the opponent to change direction, but Qin Iryi's horse was the best. He whipped desperately as soon as he got on the horse. Grandpa gave another slap in the face, the horse sped up, and immediately jumped far away. Their plan failed, so they could only continue to chase. The guards are already going crazy. We are your guards, why are you hiding from us? We are not chasing you, but protecting you. Qin Iryi couldn't hear the voices of the guards, he only had one thought in his mind now: run away, run away. The sound of the wind was all around his ears, and besides that, the thunderous da-da sound from Kinkai behind him made him rush forward without daring to stop. Seeing the guards catching up with him, second master Qin felt even more frightened. He had to run faster. As long as he was faster than them, he could save his life. If the guards knew their master's psychology, they would definitely tell him that they are being chased by Qi Heiran, not by a bear. Qin Iryi's way of riding a horse greatly consumes the horse's physical strength. Although his horse is a 1,000-mile horse, it is impossible to run like this for a whole day. Therefore, when he reaches a large valley, Qin Iryi the horse was exhausted, and no matter how much he whipped it, the speed gradually slowed down. Qi Heiran led his men to catch up, but the other party didn't even resist and was tied up by them. What a joke! How can 5 people fight against 1,000 people? The guards wanted to commit suicide to protect their loyalty, but their master sat on the horse in a daze, and they couldn't lift the sword in their hands, so they could only let Qi Heiran's men take them down. Before Qi Heiran had time to interrogate Qin Iryi, he ordered to retreat quickly. This is a very large valley, at least as far as the front line of sight can see is flat land. With low peaks on both sides and sparse trees on it, there is no way to hide people, and naturally there is no ambush, so the soldiers feel a little strange, but still after obeying the order, the team changed to the orderly exit of the former team. After 4 or 5 miles out of the valley, Chi-Heiran breathed a sigh of relief, and asked people to stop and find a place to rest in the wind. The feeling of being peeped at and palpitations just now disappeared. Chi-Heiran has never been a curious person, but this is an enemy country, and all the information of the enemy country may determine the outcome of the battlefield, so Chi-Heiran found a few soldiers with the best scouting ability and asked them to go back and investigate. Chi-Heiran can pat his chest to assure that someone must have been watching them somewhere just now. In order to divert their attention, Chi-Heiran sent a few more teams to let them hang around the valley, whether it is to shoot rabbits or pee, in short, come back immediately if there is danger. Does it need to go to the valley 4 or 5 miles away to beat a rabbit to pee? However, the guards still went on horseback, and the scout team took advantage of the cover to sneak into the mountain. When they came back, they excitedly told Chi-Heiran that there was a mine inside. Although they were not sure what it was, it looks like it is very valuable, and the most important thing is that they don't have many guards, and they can easily be taken by 1,000 of them. Chi-Heiran looked at Second Master Qin curiously, squatted in front of him and asked, "Did you lure us here on purpose? Is there an ambush inside?" Second Master Qin sneered, turned his head away and did not answer. Chi-Heiran pinched his thigh, the other party screamed. Chi-Heiran looked at him seriously for a while, and said to his own soldiers, "His father is Qin Xiang, maybe it was really a show before, but I am not a coward. Since we have all come, we can't retreat back in a daze. Let people go to scout the nearby mountains. Let's go in and take a look." What the hell are you doing with the Xixia people? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 830. Qin Iryi was a little happy when he heard that he was going into the mountain. If Chi-Heiran took him away at this time, he really couldn't escape. He didn't know who owned the mine in the mountain, but as long as Chi-Heiran stayed here, he has the hope of escaping or offending. But Qin Iryi overestimated the people in the mountains. Chi-Heiran led his men to eat dry food and slept until midnight. After making arrangements, he quietly surrounded the mine, and took the mine away without much effort. Chi-Heiran kicked down the fence set up in the mine, kicked the seized knives on the ground, walked up to a steward, and asked in Tangut, "How many people are there in the mine?" The steward saw that Chi-Heiran was from Han. He was in doubt, and asked in Xixia language, "You are not from Xixia, are you from Daki?" Fei Bai stretched out his hand and slapped him, and said in Xixia language, "There's so much nonsense, I ask you what to say, tell me quickly, how many absenteeism and guards are there in your mine?" The steward's face was ugly, but seeing that the well-trained soldiers guarding the mine mouth, he knew he couldn't escape, and if he didn't answer, the other party could figure it out by himself, so he gritted his teeth and confessed. It turned out that this mine was not mined by the Xixia court, but by a small noble in Xixia privately. Because it was hidden from the court, the scale of the mine was not large. There were only more than 800 absenteists, and only 300 guards. Chi-Heiran went to see those absenteists who were pulled out, and it turned out that most of them were Han Chinese, and a small number were also people of other ethnicities. The steward told them that they were all slaves who had been looted. Chi-Heiran hated it, and only 300 guards, more than 800 of them could not escape. Chi-Heiran asked people to separate them into custody, and then entered the mine tunnel with a dark face. Because the steward said the scale was not large, Chi-Heiran didn't think about how much gold could be inside, but a personal guard stepped forward and opened a mine, and seeing the gold nuggets and bricks piled up inside, Chi-Heiran just stared wide-eyed. However, the guard walking in front had his eyes straightened, and he didn't move a bit. Chi-Heiran closed his mouth, glanced at him calmly, and said, "Wipe the drool from the corner of your mouth." The guard subconsciously raised his hand and wiped his mouth, only then realized his gaffe, and hurriedly stood at attention. Chi Heiran went in, took a piece of gold, weighed it in his hand, turned his head and said to Fei Bai, "You lead someone to guard here, no one is allowed to enter." Fei Bai responded. Chi Heiran brought over the manager of the mine and asked, "Is this the small scale you said?" The steward cried, and said, "General, wrong, there is a reason for this, because it is too far away from the city, and it is difficult to transport on the road. In order not to attract attention, our gold is transported every 6 months, and the snow melts at the end of March every year. Afterwards and before the snow falls in September, the gold will be transported once, but who knows that this year's Xixia border activities are very frequent, and other troops have come. In order to prevent people from discovering, the master asked us to postpone the gold delivery. The gold is the amount of half a year." Chi Heiran narrowed his eyes, stepped on his chest and asked, "Tell me, what else are you hiding?" The steward yelled, saying that it was gone. A personal guard asked in a low voice, "Have you been mining this mine for several years? How many years will it take to finish mining?" The steward stopped crying. Chi Heiran crushed his foot hard, and the steward immediately shouted, 10 years, at the current speed, at least 10 more years. Chi Heiran's eyes lit up. This gold mine is not small. The guards who had the same idea as Chi Heiran looked at each other, and someone suggested in a low voice, "General, let's rob this gold mine." Chi Heiran glanced at them, and said, "You think this mountain is a piece of gold, grab it and run away, do you have the ability to move mountains? Then we'll rob this area, anyway, this was our land before." Everyone just glanced at the guard and said nothing. This piece of land was lost by Dezhou, and it has been lost for more than 20 years. Let alone the question of whether it can be snatched back, the key is whether the snatching will cause a war between the two countries. The gold mine that was finally robbed was not enough to pay for food and grass. Chi Heiran rubbed his chin and thought about it for a long time, and finally felt that this matter was of great importance. He couldn't make a decision by himself, so he had to go back and ask everyone's opinions, but there were 3 things for sure. First, they had to remove the existing gold. The absenteists in the mine were rescued and left. There is a shortage of people. Most of these absenteists are Han Chinese. They just took them back to settle down and farm. Thirdly, they had to guard the mine first. Therefore, Chi Heiran decisively left 700 people and half of the absentees behind. He took 300 people to escort Qin Iryi and 400 absentees back first. Before leaving, Chi Heiran quietly executed the steward and the guards. The leader separated the guards of the mine and detained them, and then each of them withdrew to the border of Daki with a few pieces of gold. They chased Qin Iryi and others deep into Xixia, but it only took half a day. Although they took 400 absenteeism at this time, the speed was slower, but they still returned to the guard before dark. Seeing them, Lu Dehai's ashen complexion improved, and he rushed up, "General, where have you gone? The general thought you died in Xixia. I will take all the 2 guards near Xixia. I chose it because I was afraid that they would report to the Xixia army, but I don't know how long I can hide it. If you don't come back tonight, the general will give the emperor a discount." "Okay," Chi Heiran patted him on the shoulder as he walked, and said, "You have done a good job, you have chosen their guards well, and you can cut off the news so that we can move the gold." "Yeah, no, what gold to move?" Lu Dehai realized that he didn't seem to understand what the general said. Chi Heiran pulled the man closer to the tent, took out the gold nugget he was carrying, stuffed it into his arms, and said, "For this gold, quickly ask another 1,000 soldiers to bury pots and make food, prepare the carriage and mule cart, God after dark, you take them to store gold, and you have to come back before dark tomorrow, and leave the border to the Lord, and the Lord will not let anyone find you." Lu Dehai held the gold in a daze, lowered his voice and asked, How much gold is there? I don't know, I haven't weighed it, but there should be tens of thousands of taels, so you should hurry up and bring those absentees back, bring signal fireworks, and notify the master if there is any danger, and the master will bring someone to rescue you. Each of Liu Dehe rode in pairs and led his people to the valley under the guidance of several personal guards. Chi Heiran squinted his eyes and then unfolded the map to check the border line. Chi Heiran drew some circle, humming, "Don't they like to harass and plunder? This time, I will let them have a taste of this, and inform the guards that all the guards will use the same method to go to Zixia tomorrow at Yashi, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, walk around the territory, grab what you see, don't hurt women and children, don't kill civilians. As for encountering Zixia soldiers, we will do what Zixia soldiers did before, don't expand the situation, but we don't want to be grandchildren, understand yet? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 831. 7 or 8 of the guards on the Zixia border were picked out at once, which made the Zixia general who received the news furious. He took the knife and was about to fight Chi Heiran desperately, but was stopped by the people below. "General, nobody died. No one is dead, our things were also robbed, and so many of our soldiers were injured, Chi Heiran is too bullying." The deputy general twitched his mouth and said, "General, the Han people are learning from us. Don't they have a saying, do you use the same way to give back to others?" I think Chi Heiran meant that. The general slapped the table angrily, pointed at his nose and cursed, "Are you on our side or their side?" "General, I'm telling the truth, I don't mean to speak for them." "General, it's getting dark at this time. Even if we go, we can't fight them in the dark. Why don't we wait and go find them tomorrow? Anyway, they both know each other well that neither side wants to cause a large-scale war, just a small fight. But they are here to attract Chi Heiran's attention to the border, so that Qin Er can retreat with his people, so why did Chi Heiran take so much trouble? Just to vent your anger? Chi Heiran wasted so much time and energy to cover Liu Dehe and the others. Although the Zixia border is sparsely populated and looks like no one lives there, he must be careful of the Zixia soldiers who are patrolling back and forth. Chi Heiran is afraid of them. Taxian found out that there was no news from the 2 guards, so he came to find Liu Dehe and the others. The time was chosen at U hour because that was the time they estimated that Liu Dehe would return to this neighborhood. They lured the people away, and Liu Dehe brought more than 2,000 people and gold to come out safely. At this moment, Chi Heiran looked at the gold in the box with bright eyes, and asked, "Have you weighed it? How much is there?" There is a reputation in the mine, and Liu Dehe is afraid of being entrained and stolen, so he has recorded it in the book. At this time, the thief took out a book and said, "A total of 23,587 2 golds, my lord, we'll give it away." Chi Heiran knocked on his head, glanced at him and said, "You didn't take it." Liu Dehe smiled, and said, "How dare we know that you are going to be sent to the state treasury, so we dare not even touch it." Chi Heiran snorted coldly, and said, "I won't pay the odds and ends in your own hands, but they must be divided evenly. I don't want brothers to fight over a few pieces of gold." Cold sweat broke out on Liu Dehe's back, and he responded quickly. Chi Heiran only said that he wanted to transport the gold in the mine, but at that time besides the gold in the mine, the furnace was still open, and there was still some gold that hadn't been sent to the mine in time, but Fei Bai said that once he left, the guards took the rest of the gold that had been absent from work for a day. This was another batch, and Liu Dehe led the people to divide the gold. There is not much gold, but there are many people. Except for Liu Dehe and the leading lieutenants, only 2 or 3 taels per person are allocated to the subordinate soldiers. Chi Heiran warned him, just to let him forget the 300 soldiers he had brought back before. People don't worry about being few but about being uneven. He doesn't want such a small piece of gold to cause conflicts among his soldiers. Liu Dehe loves money, but he loves power even more. He has always known how to choose. After returning home, he took out most of his share of gold, and collected some from several school lieutenants to distribute to the 300 soldiers. Now everyone has gold and is happy. Chi Heiran waited for their excitement to pass and called them over, saying, "Okay, since the gold has been brought back, let's discuss what to do next. There is still a small flag for us at the mine. There must be an explanation for whether it is robbing or retiring. Also, the 2 guards on the opposite side asked us to kill them all. I guess this will not be hidden for a few days. Find a reason to fool the past. Everyone use their brains to think about it." The big guys looked at each other, and said, "Ardaki and Zixia are enemies, isn't it justified to fight and kill people? Do you need a reason?" Chi Heiran glared at him, "You want to reopen the border war? No matter what, we have to make up for it. Think about it quickly, and we will preemptively go to them to settle accounts at dawn tomorrow." The generals. What should they do if they suddenly feel that the Zixia general is a bit pitiful? Chi Heiran couldn't make up his mind if the gold mine should be occupied or retreated, but he found the reason for the murder. He lay on the bed and said to Luda, "At dawn, you will take people to the general of Zixia to settle the score. Let's just say that his soldiers rushed into the Daki border and ran into my own soldiers, and injured the lord. Let them give an explanation." Liu Dehe twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "General, this will damage your reputation. You are stupid. Wouldn't you say that I was taking a walk with my personal guards at that time, and I only brought 4 or 5 people? Isn't it normal for their 400 or 500 soldiers to rush over and seriously injure the lord? You just say that you killed 2. The guard is avenging me, and by the way, I would like to ask him for some compensation. My father was seriously injured, and I need a lot of precious medicinal materials." Liu Dehe felt that Chi Heiran was too shameless. He was even more like a bandit than a former bandit. "General, the general knows what to do, and the general will take people there." Chi Heiran lay on the bed lazily and ordered, "Be more angry, pretend to be a little bit, and don't let people see the flaws." Liu Dehe kept running out. Chi Heiran waited for the others to go far before turning over, beckoning Fei Bai and his lieutenant general, and said, "You guys escort this batch of gold back to Juzhu yourself. If I haven't returned to Juzhu mansion by then, you will hand over the things to me. Hand it over to Lorden." Fei Bai and the lieutenant general agreed, and Chi Heiran lay back on the bed and fell asleep after the others retreated. The general of Zixia here just finished his breakfast, and was fiddling with the news sent by one of the guards. He wondered, why are there 2 missing news from the guards? They didn't send it yesterday, and there is no news today. As soon as the words fell, a servant came in hurriedly and said, "General, the general at Daki's side is shouting to see you by name." The general frowned. "How do they know we are in this guard? Their headquarters is mobile. He just arrived at the guard post the day before yesterday, and was about to leave today, but Dachi was able to find his location accurately. After all, they still couldn't find their headquarters. The other people in the tent are all Yilin. Are there spies, or is there some secret method for the Han people to find them?" The general pushed aside the case table and strode out. He rode his horse and led his troops to inspect it. Liu Dehe rode on the horse with a dark face, staring at them with big eyes. The horse stopped before the border line. The general frowned and asked, "Who are you?" "The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 832. General Zixia's face was ugly. Dachi picked 2 of their guards, they didn't even know it. He glared at his subordinates, and looked at Liu Dehe coldly. Liu Dehe was not afraid of him at all. He sat on the horse and almost jumped, clamoring for them to give them an explanation. Why did they commit crimes, and even assassinated their prince? Did they want to provoke war between the two countries? The great general of Xixia only felt aggrieved, but he had to bear it. He didn't want to fight Qi. They had 350,000 soldiers stationed in the southwest, and with Qi Heiran in command, it was very difficult to win the battle. So they had no choice but to beat him to death. In this way, the soldiers in the two guards died in vain. After the two sides quarreled for a whole day, General Xixia returned to the central tent with an ugly expression on his face, and said, "Immediately ask someone to go to the two guards to investigate the situation. General, maybe they are slandering us. The Han people crossed the border yesterday to loot our Xixia people. Before Daki's people were just defending, why did they suddenly counterattack on a large scale last night?" General Xixia roared. Needless to say, it must have been their counterattack annoyed by King Rong, who assassinated them. At this time, most people have already believed Liu Dehai's words, because they are Xixia people, and no one knows their soldiers better than them. In the case of killing the other party, they will definitely make a move. King Rongjun, if you kill him, at least you can get a daughter from the emperor, and the title will not be a problem. It's a pity that the people from the two guards failed to kill King Rong, but told him to escape and fight back. General, since Qi Heiran is injured, why don't we go all out? No, the general refused without even thinking about it. He glanced at him and said, "How many people are there on our border now? How many are there? And I don't know how injured Qi Heiran is. What if he scratches his skin? He is a general. Even if he doesn't have to go to the battlefield, just sitting in the back and commanding is enough for us. The general is too ambitious for others." The general sneered, "That's because you have never fought against Qi Heiran. If Qi Ziyuan is a general, then Qi Heiran is a genius on the battlefield." Everyone was silent. Those who had fought with Qi Heiran all remembered the battle 4 years ago, and those who hadn't, seeing other people's solemn expressions, could not help but straighten their faces. "This matter has to be delayed, so I'll ask the emperor to send an angel to negotiate peace." The general coughed twice, and said, "Although our guards injured Qi Heiran, they also killed 2 of our guards. Soldier, there is no telling who is right or wrong about this matter." All the generals suddenly felt that their general was shameless enough. They obviously didn't take advantage of this war, but who cares about fighting? Everyone comforted themselves in their hearts. Qi Heiran lay on the bed for 2 days, and saw Liu Dehai going to fight with Xixia people every day. Although the other party went to collect the bodies of 2 Xixia soldiers, he did not fight with them again. They all stopped. Qi Heiran understood the other party's plan after a little thought. Since they didn't want to do anything, Qi Heiran didn't waste time here, and immediately asked the military doctor to wrap some gauze around his chest, and then smeared his face to make his face paler, and he was carried away to watch the excitement. General Xixia saw Qi Heiran immediately. His expression changed, and he was relieved to see that he was just watching the fun from a distance. He also understood Qi Heiran, but he had no choice. He was once his defeated general. Are difficult. Seeing him sitting on the recliner watching the excitement, he knew that he was like them and did not want to escalate the situation. He probably just wanted some compensation. "I heard that Daqi's life was also very difficult." General Xixia understood the key point after a little thought, and he was not in the mood to continue scolding Liu Dehai. His voice was hoarse from shouting these 2 days. He entrusted this difficult task to the lieutenant general, and secretly slip away. You can't ask Qi Heiran to catch him, otherwise what should he do if he asks him to give an explanation immediately? Let's wait for the angel to come. When Liu Dehai returned to the camp at night, he was dissatisfied and said, "My lord, why did you go to the border today, causing the other party's general to slip away?" Qi Heiran had already changed his clothes, turned around and said, "I'm going back to the Zhu capital now. I'll leave the border affairs to you. Don't let people find out that I'm not in the camp, but it's okay if they find out." "Are you going back to Zhu at this time?" Yes, Zixia should also be waiting for their emperor's will. Anyway, this period of time is just a war of words. You are good at this. I will go back to Jezhu to deal with some things, and it will come soon. After Chi Heiran explained, he took a few soldiers and rushed to Jezhu, because they were light and easy to drive, so they arrived at Jezhu's capital faster than Fei Bai and others who escorted the gold. As soon as Chi Heiran came back, he left Fan Zijian just to ask him if he would take the opportunity to fight and snatch back the land with the gold mine, which is not a small gold mine. Facing Chi Heiran's eager eyes, Mu Yangling blurted out, "Why do we have to fight? Didn't you say they hurt you? Then let them pay for it." Chi Heiran opened his mouth wide and said, "Aling, you really dare to think about it?" He just wanted Zixia to pay for some medicinal materials, and Aling was going to pay for the land directly. It is not a small piece of land to move from the border to the gold mine. Fan Zijian looked at the couple squarely now, touched his chin and said, "It's not impossible." Now it was the turn of Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran to open their mouths wide. Mu Yangling swallowed and said, I'm just talking casually." Fan Zijian snorted, and said, "You write a letter to Lu Dehei immediately, asking him to withdraw all the people who stayed in the mine, and clean up all the traces. Leave this matter alone and ask the elder brother to send an angel to come. Negotiating with them, demanding prices and repaying money on the spot, state affairs are the same as doing business. How do you know it's impossible if you don't mention it?" Chi Heiran opened his mouth wide. Then what if the owner of the gold mine reports the gold mine? He didn't dare. Fan Zijian said with a sneer, "Didn't you say that the gold mine has been mined nearly half? It means that the gold mine has been in operation for almost 10 years. If he dares to report it, the generals guarding the border in Zixia can eat it alive. Even if we let him go, the Western Xia court will not let him go, so there is no need to consider him in this matter." Mu Yangling took Lacey Heiran's hand and said, "I think this matter should be left to Zijian. This is called specialization in surgery, and he is better at negotiating. Father, mother, I also specialize in art. I'm the best at hiding gold. Give me this piece of gold." Little Xiang looked at his parents anxiously while holding the piece of gold. Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran looked at Xiaoxiang's big eyes full of longing in silence. Fan Zijian turned his head and pretended not to see it.